Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Survivor podcast. We thought this would be a fun addition to our post-show content, so after each episode we'll have some guests to discuss what went down on Survivor and spill all the tea on what went down behind the scenes. And this episode as guests we'll also have NANU or Ananda Lewis from The Mole.
Holla!
As well as Survivor alumnus Kyle or Angie Jakusz.
Hello.
And we'll be interviewing our iconic first boot winner, Cathal or Darnell Hamilton.
Hi everybody, my name is Darnell and I am the first boot flop of Survivor 40. So thank you for having me on.
Iconic first boot, I love that. So thanks so much for taking the time to do this podcast. This is completely new territory for us. So
hey, what better new territory than in the 40th season, right?
Right.
Glad to be on the first experiment of it.
And does this podcast have a name?
We're workshopping it. Yeah, so why don't we get straight to it? I know you wanted to talk about how Winners at War was conceptualized, and I think that pretty much is self-explanatory given the fact that it was in fact the 40th season of CBS Survivor.
And you had planned on sticking with that pretty closely. I remember a while ago saying like Winners at War is mandatory for everybody. Right? Like you had been planning on this for a while at least.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I've been playing this for as soon as the actual season ran, right? Which was how long ago was that? That was
3 years ago?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
So it was just a matter of getting the seasons for Survivor ! To catch up with season 40, right? And well, last season we did 39, which was all runners up, and that was sort of meant to be a lead up to this 40th season. And yeah, I did say it was mandatory, but you know that's what I always say.
Of course.
If there's ever a first boot season.
And so when it came to finding the winners, because obviously we've had 39 seasons prior to this, we've had a few people who've won multiple times. How did you go about like reaching out to all of the winners? Because not everybody's on Discord.
Exactly. It was a process, let me tell you that. So I think we started reaching out to people several months in advance.
Well, I assume the Discord winners were the first ones to be reached out to because they were the ones that were already available.
Exactly. So the first process, Darnell was actually the first person I reached out to.
Cool.
I kind of went down the list. The Discord winners were all really receptive. I think they were all much more mentally prepared for Winners at War than the older players were. And it just helped to have everybody on Discord and everybody was familiar with Discord. So that was the easy part.
So, I mean, kind of the joke is that you were reaching out to people on LinkedIn, that you were reaching out to people like, I don't know, through like newspaper ads. How did you get in contact with everybody? That as far back as I think Jerry was the oldest winner from season 4. How did you go as far back to reach out to everybody? Because I'm assuming, was it all social media? Was it?
It was a combination of all that. So if you recall, back in the early days, we had votes being submitted by email and applications being submitted by email. And so I used the email accounts to try to look for where people were. For most of the cases, their full name was in the email, was on the email account. And so I could Google that name, and it involved a whole process of trying to figure out who was like potentially the person I was looking for out of all the people who shared that name. I did in fact go to LinkedIn for at least 4 or 5 cases to reach out to people. There was Twitter, there was Instagram. It was pretty much any platform you could think of.
Amazing.
I'm actually really surprised at how many people I managed to get back. Some of these were really out of the blue. Like for example, I think Crystal I had lost touch with for a long time, but she was actually one of the easier ones to email because she had the same email address and she was already familiar with Discord. But you're right, there are a lot of the players this season have not been on Discord and had to get used to Discord.
I think I remember very early on, like maybe during the first episode in real time, you saying that there were people who had accepted, but then couldn't figure out Discord, so just kind of dropped out then.
That was like one person, John
Oh,
Coach
okay.
Roblox. Or I don't even know if he came onto Discord, but I think he said that he would play, and then I didn't really hear back from him. That was the only case. I think everybody else sort of got used to Discord and learned it. And I think, hey, I think Discord is a great platform for this.
Oh, absolutely. Like, take it from someone. I guess we've all been there, from the forum era to the
Mhm.
Discord era, and like, there's a lot more navigability in terms of challenges, in terms of confessionals.
In terms of being able to keep things private as well, which is
Yeah.
nice.
And another juicy piece of information, I didn't promise I would spill the tea, was one of the difficulties with casting the older players was that there was actually a lot of concern about past beef carrying into the season.
Ooh.
And so there were some requests, or like concerns at least being expressed about whether or not they would play if somebody else was playing. And I can tell you, at least one person rejected the invite based on that.
I believe
Oh,
that.
okay. That's
Oh.
news to me.
Ooh. Can you say who it was?
I can say that, well, actually, it wasn't even based on somebody who was playing, but based on other people who would be in the server.
Oh.
Oh.
That's pretty extreme. I'll decide if I want to spell the name.
Ooh, drama.
Anyway,
Yeah, this is also part of why I'm happy, relieved that I'm more on the production side of the season instead of like, playing as one of the reps.
I think a great thing is that like a lot of people who came in with beef sort of managed to let at least some of that go and move on and rebuild some of those relationships, which, I mean, spoiler alert, but I think that's great.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like a lot of people maybe were able to put some demons behind them, maybe that they wouldn't have expected to, based on maybe whenever their last interaction with each other was.
Agreed. And I guess that's also part of what makes Returnee seasons interesting, because
Mhm.
you sort of get to see how these winners who've won in their own seasons interact now, and then you see how their past relationships, whether good or bad, impact their current relationships. Are they going to try to maintain the peace? Are they going to try to hold on to past grudges? Are they going to try to reform their old bonds? So it's very interesting to see how it's going to play out throughout the season.
Exactly.
And-
yeah.
And it's interesting too, because it's been so much time. When back in FGC those days, a lot of us played over and over and over again in the same games, or in the different games, but with almost the same cast.
Exactly.
But now it's been so long that I think some people hadn't played any of these games in years.
Yeah. And I guess that's also a big difference between like the old winners who were in FGC, the forum,
Mhm.
and the Discord winners, because the Discord winners, they've not played with each other at all until this season, whereas the FGC winners, they're the same people over and over again, the same cast. So that, I think that's also impacting how the season played
Exactly.
out.
Yeah. You see a lot of that in the first episode.
I think the level, the standard was so much higher in season 40 than my initial season. Like, just the amount of time you have to commit to the social game and stuff is just a completely different level. Even just from the 2 days I was there. That's just one thing I noticed.
That's really interesting to know, because I was actually worried going to the season that when I was asking for people to come back and play, I got the sense that a lot of people felt like they were not going to be able to commit the time, or if didn't feel like they were secure about like how good of a player they were going to be this time around, because like
Yeah,
the past. And so it's really interesting to see like how everybody came in full force. I think there were like really no inactives.
yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought I was kind of worried that there were going to be a lot of inactives, and there was like not the case at all.
Oh,
And-
no, everyone seems to like really want to sort of be the second time. Well, I know it's technically not the second time, but I think it was such a big season, that they were committed.
Mhm. Well, in a way, the deck was kind of stacked against you, right? Because you have a lot of people with pre-existing relationships, and in such a short span of time, it's hard to break that, make that connection.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I found, because like just even with Lindsay, for example, like I barely talked to her, so I kind of made the assumption that everyone else had barely talked to her and that she'd be sort of an easier like option to target, but it turned out that she was already kind of like firmly in the majority with people she'd known like 10, 15 years ago, and I just had no idea that she was that well connected. So I
Looking
think
at the tribe cams from the other tribes during the challenge, it seemed like a lot of the others assume that Cathal would be booting Lindsay. So that's
oh really?
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's easier to go with people you know, even if maybe you didn't get along with them way back when. I do have one other question. We had two people who were in this cast who had won multiple seasons as different reps. That was Brenda and Aris. How did you choose that Brenda and Aris would be the representatives versus JP or Eve or Mike, or did they choose? Was it your choice?
They chose it.
Okay.
Didn't have the choice. Yeah, it didn't really matter to me. In terms of gender ratio, it was pretty much even regardless. All right, so yeah, maybe we could talk about the division of tribes now, since that kind of leads into it.
Oh yeah.
I did get a lot of questions this season about why we chose to do it completely randomly. Well, actually, not completely randomly, because there was still an element of non-randomness, right?
Basically, what we did was we organized the winners based on their chronological order, I believe. We had like the earliest three winners, and then we randomized their tribes, and then we had the next three winners, we randomized their tribes, and so on and so forth. And I think that's basically it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was just like intended to make sure that every tribe had a combination of new school people and old school people, so they could interact early, right from the bat.
How soon did you decide that was how you were going to break up the tribes? Was that immediately? Did you consider some other options first?
I think it was the day before the marooning, actually, because
Amazing.
we were working. We weren't able to figure out whether or not we were doing a cast of 21 or 22 or 20. The thing about these things is if somebody doesn't get in their cast bio on time, then we're kind of like stuck in a place where we have to cut them, and then we have to adjust the twist for the rest of the season. So there's a lot of unpredictability that goes into it right before the day we begin.
Absolutely.
There's also the issue of Cole, who was going to be traveling at the time, and he didn't know if his internet was going to be good enough to play the game, basically. And I think he decided that he couldn't participate in the season, so the cast number went down to 21. And I think it was partially from a place where I just didn't want to have to like plan out the tribes that I decided to do it randomly. It was a lot of work for 36 game changers and 39 Marquesas to do that. And apart from not wanting to do the work, so what we did in those seasons was we had like this complex web of relationships that we could discern from past interactions and what we knew, and then we would try to make sure people with that didn't have too close of relationship were not in the same tribe, right? But I think this season we wanted it to be as minimal production interference if possible. Like I didn't want to have people saying, "Oh, okay, it was because production decided to separate me from my friends, and therefore I was voted out early." Now it's just fate, right? I felt like that was like the fairest way to go about it. And for a long time now, people have known that Winners at War was going to be a thing. So if you decided that you wanted to do the pre-gaming like years in advance, hey,
Gonna make it a lot harder.
I guess the most
Yeah.
interesting part for
Yeah.
me as a dream teamer who was also part of like the way we discussed this, and I do remember that we were going back and forth as to whether we were gonna randomize it, how we were gonna randomize it, how the groupings were gonna be. I guess the most interesting part for me was that this was a different process because I was on Game Changers as Michael. I was on Marquesas as Michael. And at the time, I felt like the tribes were also somewhat randomly distributed. I didn't realize that there was a lot more production interference that went into how it went on. So I guess, was there yeah, I was like, was it during that time? Like, was there also a consideration about minimizing the production?
Yeah, so I would totally share that web because we drew out that web in both Game Changers and Marquesas, which you were part of, and so you probably didn't see. But it's basically like this person links to this person, and then you have this whole web, and then we tried to pick like an optimization of tribes that where as much of those links were severed as possible.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it probably was never going to be perfect.
No.
But
it's
that's
never
fine.
gonna be like 100% sure. I mean, we've seen it on attorney seasons, not just in Survivor, but in general. Like, there's always gonna be an element of pre-existing relationships, and that's what makes attorney seasons different from like your standard newbie seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so fire tokens obviously came from the show, but you use them kind of differently in that they were just for the Final Four fire making contest.
Yeah, you would remember like the doubloons.
Pearl Islands.
Exactly.
Where it was, I can't remember, doubloons is what they were called, because I played in that season, and I thought like, oh, maybe that would be a good way to tie back to a previous twist, because I know sometimes you do that in the returnee season. So why was it just for Final Four? Was that just to kind of make things less complicated, just to have people see if they would sabotage more so they'd have more of a leg up if they made it there?
Yeah, I think a little bit of everything. So one reason is that, well, the name fire tokens, I don't know, I just felt like there had to be an element that connected it to fire. We already did the boots before, and that was and I didn't really want to use any of the twists from pre-season 20 because those had already gone into heroes versus villains. So I didn't really want the fire tokens twist to be like a replica of the doubloons twist. And you're right, it was also a lot more complex. And if we wanted to work in all the other twists, then that would be a lot.
That would have been a nightmare. Yeah.
It would have been a nightmare. Yeah. And so because we wanted to, I also wanted to work in the twist, the fire making twist from heroes versus healers versus hustlers, which will probably become more of a staple in the new seasons moving forward. I don't know, it just seemed like a good way to tie that fire tokens twist back into that.
I did not watch the actual season, so like I did not understand what fire tokens were, how they worked. Like, I'm very happy in terms of like how the fire tokens were executed here. It felt a lot simpler to understand. And as someone who tried, and as someone when I play Survivor, like I genuinely make it a point to not get too overwhelmed with the twists. Because sometimes it can get too much when you try to process everything and overthink. So to understand that, like, okay, these are tokens that you can manage, and then you save it up for a fire making challenge at the end, that seems simpler to grasp. And I think we'll see in the later episodes where, like, because I'm a dream teamer, I got to see what was happening behind the scenes. I think we'll get to see how even the simple fire token mechanic, it can impact the game outside of like the fire making challenge, if that makes sense.
Oh no, and obviously even not as a dream teamer, but as a viewer, kind of half paying attention while things were happening, knowing that people could sacrifice at challenges and do that, and I'm assuming that some of the scores were impacted because of that. Because maybe everybody was just that bad.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm still figuring out how I want to structure the fire tokens part into the episodes because there was a lot of it being given out, and I don't think the episodes can really go into detail about who found which fire token when, and nor do I think anybody would really care. But maybe there'll be a chart at the end of each episode to set out what the fire token tally is.
Yeah, that would make it simple.
So when you were reading the episode back, was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, I think the main thing was just how sort of strong the old school versus new school thing was just so early, because I didn't really realize that until after I'd left, and I kind of I was just wondering what I'd done wrong for a while, but I think it was just so hard to break into those connections, and you really have to like people like Nick and Peter are able to do it, but I think Nick seems to just spend so long on that first day talking to people, and everyone in his tribe was just saying how close they felt with him. And I guess that's sort of the standards you need to be able to break into those sort of pre-existing relationships. You have to be fully committed and talking like a lot to be able to break that down. And I don't think I realized that at the time.
That makes sense. Did you think that had you not lost the immunity challenge, the first immunity challenge, I mean, would you have been able to, let's say, maneuver enough so that in case you do go to tribal council, in case you went to tribal council after that, you would have been able to survive?
Yeah, I'd like to think that. It's hard to really tell, but I'm at least glad reading the episode that at least some people felt kind of bad about voting me out. I mean, not enough to not vote for me, but they were kind of like, oh, he was nice and it wasn't my first option and all of that. So maybe if there was an extra few days, I could have switched things around, but it's really hard to know. That first challenge was just really set me back in a bad way, I think, because there was only 2 days and it just couldn't do anything in that sort of time.
Going into it, did you have an idea of how you wanted to play it?
Not really, actually. I kind of just sort of, I don't know, I was trying to figure out how I went last time to start with, and I guess I was going to kind of lean on my social game a lot, but like I said, the standard was just so high that I didn't really, I was reading through it yesterday, the episode, and Nick said he spent, was it 7 hours or something, talking to people in the marooning, which is crazy to me. I just wasn't really expecting that sort of level, I think. But I wanted to try and just break connections with everyone, I suppose, off the bat. But yeah, I suppose I just didn't do that enough to keep me around.
Oh, it was definitely fun seeing I mean, of course, I got a read of the confessionals as a dream teamer. I got to see what everyone's thoughts were like. But to see it put out in an episode and then have a more or less cohesive storyline play out, it's very interesting, especially considering what you discussed about in terms of the casting web, how past relationships will play, and it's interesting to contextualize that in terms of how it's playing out in why Darnell got sadly, booted first.
Yeah. I think a difficulty about editing this episode was I quickly realized how pretty much everybody's a star, Normal seasons, you have people who confessional more and some who take a little longer to get up to that speed. But really everybody was giving really good confessionals. So I could only use in some cases, about maybe 10 to 20% of what people were giving me. So it was really a hard process to edit it down. And I think the episode gave everyone pretty much even screen time, which is not common for these episodes.
Sure. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I felt like everybody had something to say and got to kind of share their perspective, which I think was helpful. 100%. And yeah, I know, obviously not having played this season, but having seen some of the Discord seasons and then having played way, way, way back in the day, usually, at least in the beginning, there's somebody who just doesn't show up or doesn't do anything. Everybody was here ready to play right from the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a few people in the season mentioned it in their confessionals. There's no easy boot. How are we going to go about doing this?
Yeah.
And that they felt bad for whoever was going to go first because they would have not really have made any mistakes that would warrant being first boot.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, poor Darnell was just on the wrong tribe, or not even the wrong tribe, the tribe that lost the first challenge and didn't really have as much time to make inroads with people who had known each other for a lot longer.
Out of everybody on your tribe, was there anybody that you felt closest to?
Don't think I had a super close relationship. Probably, I'd say the three would be Aris, Natalie, and Silas were the ones I talked to the most, and the others I didn't really get to chat to, especially Lindsay and Alec, I think it was. I think partly because of the time zones, I just barely talked to them at all, which wouldn't have helped.
Do you regret what you said after you were voted off, not knowing that Edge of Extinction was a possibility, but quickly after finding out that it was? Because I remember you were pretty vocal in your anger at the tribe for being eliminated right away and regretted it almost immediately.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That was instant regret because I found out literally 2 minutes later about that twist. Yeah. Well, honestly, I actually don't regret it. So I wanted to have. I guess I just have a little moment for myself almost because I didn't feel like I got to do much in those 2 days, and I didn't really think anyone was gonna save me that early on anyway. So no, I don't regret it. I think it was funny and I enjoyed doing it. So yeah, and they did have a downfall. That was the best thing. I got to actually the very next vote. Natalie found that idol, and it all kind of spiraled out from there. So that was quite fun. Yeah, I was like, I was so excited for her when she found that because I think I didn't really realize that it was such an old school versus new school thing. So I was like really rooting for her by the time that came
I have to
around.
say though, as someone's watched it unfold, it was amazing. I'll be actively rooting for your downfall.
Yeah. And then you come out and you're like, fuck.
Oops. And then to give it to Lindsay of all people too, I thought was a great full circle moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of why we like to see these fraternity seasons. Like, they're not always gonna play out they're not gonna play out the way you want it to at times, but like there's always gonna be that sort of like epicness in terms of seeing these people come back to either like restore, build on, or destroy their legacies, one way or the other. So
Yeah.
it's always gonna feel epic.
Okay, so we're gonna do a word association game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and today's theme is animals.
Oh.
So I'm gonna give you a name, and you tell me what animal you think of.
Okay, this might be a bit difficult because I don't think I spoke to them that much, but I'll give it a go. This will be interesting. No, I'm just gonna say the first thing that comes into my head. So
Yeah, that's the fun of it. You don't have to explain.
Yeah.
Aris?
okay, yeah, a leopard would. I'll go with that. No real reason, but
Alec?
a badger.
Lindsay?
I'll go with a sloth. No offense.
Silas?
I don't know, a tiger.
Okay. Jay?
Jay. I'll just go with a dog.
And Natalie?
Naturally, like something dangerous. I don't know. I'll just say a snake. That's just what I thought of, but you know what I mean. That sounds bad. I just meant like something like a dangerous animal. Yeah.
I think she'd be happy with that. Any last question?
I mean, you all know who the final three are. So out of like
Yeah.
Nick, Aaron, and Karishma, who do you think is going to win?
Oh, I'm kind of rooting for Nick. I know it's very close between Nick and Aaron, but I'd like to see him do it just because, like, having to overcome being like a newer winner, and it seemed like he did a really good job of that, of connecting with some of those older players. So I'll go with Nick. It'll probably be very close though, from what I've seen.
Any final words?
Yeah, I just want to ask how viable do you think a first boot season is? Because I think I could do well in that. It's season 60 or something. Ooh.
I'm pretty sure you win that.
I hope so.
I think it's gonna happen anytime soon.
You'd have to really be delving into the contact books for that. I think that would be tough to give it 20 people for.
Well, I don't
Okay.
know. There's have been some really iconic first boots. The first person voted out of Survivor ever is somebody who came back and won twice.
Well, that's cool.
And Sarah from the season who won was also the first boot of I want to say Second Chance. So
Yeah.
hey,
You'd have at least a few people. Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it was good it's nice to be the first ever guest on Ashley Has a Podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
All right. Well, see you. Thank you.